This is the J. Scott Outdoors podcast on Western big game hunting and fishing, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today. I'm your host, Jay Scott, and I live and breathe hunting and fishing, spending half the year in the field experiencing God's creation. I hope you'll enjoy hearing about our adventures.
Big sheep. Let's do this. Let's find a winner. Got the whole list here. All we have to do is shuffle 3 times. Shuffle once, shuffle twice. Here it is. There's our guy. Call number 1.
Hello,
Hi, is Richard available?
this is Richard.
Hi, Richard. This is Lorenzo with GoHunt.com. Do you know why I'm calling you today?
I can only hope.
What are you hoping for?
I'm hoping for a dog sheep hunt.
Looks like you're going to Nahani Butte Outfitters on a Dall sheep hunt.
Are you kidding me?
Not kidding you at all, buddy.
Can you put off with the work and family? You would be leaving in literally 30 days.
I am there, man. No freaking way.
Yeah, man, you
I've just been here looking at my phone thinking, oh man, somebody took it. No way.
Yes, way.
How about that, guys? Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. What you just heard was a guy that's a GoHunt.com Insider member receiving a free hunt for $22,500 to hunt Dall sheep with Nahani Butte Outfitters. This hunt was provided by GoHunt.com Insider, and this is just one example of many hunts that you can win being a GoHunt Insider member. What an opportunity to get a phone call that you're going Dall sheep hunting. I just wanted you guys to hear the excitement in Richard's voice, who was just waiting by the phone, hoping that he was the one that was going to get picked. And what an opportunity. I want to thank GoHunt.com Insider for being a sponsor of this podcast. I also want to announce that GoHunt.com Insider has re-upped and are going to be the sponsor for a long time to come here at the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. They are my title sponsor, and I want to thank them for being such a strong company and providing such a good service. There's 4 basic reasons why I believe GoHunt.com Insider is necessary for the Western hunter. You get complete state coverage. So all of the Western states, you get complete state coverage. You get exclusive strategy articles on how to apply for each state. You get detailed species breakdowns of all the Western big game species. And then not to mention, number 4, the monthly insider giveaways. Every month they're giving away different products, different gear, different hunts. This month they are doing 4 weeks of 4 tags. They gave away an antelope hunt already. They're giving away elk hunt this week. And the next 2 weeks of July, they're giving away 2 additional hunts that they haven't announced yet, but I'm excited to see what they are. I want to thank GoHunt.com Insider for their sponsorship. I also want to tell you one thing that I use a lot inside the GoHunt Insider, and that is the historical precipitation model. I'm going to talk to you specifically about Unit 9. I will be guiding a hunter in Unit 9 in Arizona this September. And when looking at drawing or looking at places that I want to guide or that I want to draw my own personal tags, I think looking at precipitation is very important. And in the historical precipitation model, they have Unit 9 here, and they have actually 2011 through 2015 listed. So if you start back in January and you take the 2015 precipitation amount was 1.22 inches in January, you compare that to 14 at 0.07, 13 at 1.02, 2012 at 24.24, and 2011 at 0.02, drop down to February. This February in 2015, we received 1.06 inches in Unit 9 compared to 14 of 0.19, 13 of 0.18, 12 at 0.34, and 2011 0.109. You drop down to March 0.87, in 15, in 14.34, in 13.24, in 12.89, in 11.47. The three critical months here that I think are very important are April, May, and June. We've already established that January, February, and March was wetter than normal. In April of 15, it was 0.56. In 2014, it was 0.32. In 2013, it was 0.09. 2012, 0.36. 2011, 1.09. So actually, it was a half inch more in 11. But then look at these two big months. May, 2.32 inches in 2015 compared to 0.03 in 14, 0.10 in 13, 0.00 in 12, and 0.38 in 11. Then you take the month of June. May and June typically are Arizona's driest months. 1.52 inches this year in 2015 in Unit 9 compared to 14 of 0.02, 13 of 0.00, 12 of 0.00, and 11 of 0.00. So what that tells me going into the rut is that throughout this summer, the moisture has been way above average, and that there should be plenty of grass to go around, and the cow elk should be feeling fat and sassy. They should cycle on time, and we should have a real extreme rut. So that's just one of the ways that I use the Go Hunt Insider. They've got an awesome mapping. They've got a lot of different filter systems that you can go through each animal and each unit to decide where you want to apply. I want to thank GoHunt.com Insider for stepping up and re-upping their sponsorship of the J. Scott Outdoors Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing podcast. With that sponsorship, they are going above and beyond here. We are announcing that if you join Insider, you are going to get a $50 gift card in Kuiu gear. So another one of my favorite companies, Kuiu Ultralight Hunting, Jason Harrison's company, is going to provide a $50 gift card of the Kuiu gear. So all you have to do, 3 easy steps to get the $50 Kuiu gift card. Visit gohunt.com/insider. Click on the blue Join Now button. Use the promo code JScott at checkout, and that will get you the $50 Kuiu gift card. And you will also be a gohunt.com Insider member, and you will be eligible for the gear and hunt giveaways that they're doing each month. In July, they're actually giving away 4 different hunts in July. In April, when I signed up for March, I was actually 1 out of 100 that won a free phone scope, digiscoping device. So I've already won something signing up for the Go Hunt Insider membership. So I want to thank Go Hunt Insider for their sponsorship. I also want to thank Deadeye Outfitters for their sponsorship. Deadeye Outfitters is a lifestyle apparel for hunters and by hunters. Deadeye Outfitters manufactures and focuses on quality t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hats designed with hunters in mind. They are also the licensed Boone & Crockett apparel. They have the license for all the Boone & Crockett apparel. Help support Boone & Crockett, because where hunting happens, conservation happens. Also, remember that when checking out with Deadeye Outfitters, on all your purchases, enter the J. Scott promo code and receive a 10% discount on all purchases. Guys, I also want to tell you about some hunts, guided hunts that my partner and I, Dar Colburn, are doing. We own and operate GouldsTurkeyHunt.com, and we do Gould's turkey hunts in Mexico for people that are trying to complete their Royal Slams. So you have the Eastern, the Osceola, the Rio, the Merriam, and then number 5 is the Gould's turkey. And we've been going down there for many, many years, and we've been very successful with our Gould's turkey hunts. We had a few cancellations, and I want to make you guys aware of these. Our Gould's turkey hunts, I have a slot for 2 hunters. I can actually accommodate up to 4. You will be going with myself personally. I will be guiding you on the hunt. I typically like to take 2 hunters at a time, but if you have a group of 4, I can accommodate that. Those are for the dates May 11th through the 14th in Sonora, Mexico. Now we have several groups going with Dar Colburn. We have some availability from April 29th to May 2nd. We have 1 spot. You'll be paired up with another hunter. Dar will be taking 2 hunters at one time. And then May 2nd through the 5th, there are 2 slots available. So grab a buddy, come down and go Gould's turkey hunting with us in Mexico. If you want more information, you can email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. You can also visit our website, Gould's, that's GOULDS, turkeyhunt.com. You can also go on our Facebook page, Gould's Turkey Hunt, on Facebook. I want to thank you guys, our listeners, for all your support with the podcast. You guys have been amazing. I want to thank you for giving us 5-star ratings on iTunes and giving us some great positive comments. If you haven't and you enjoy the podcast, please go on iTunes and give us good ratings and good comments. Please keep the questions and comments to my email coming at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. I appreciate hearing from all of you guys every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't get text messages, voicemails, emails, Facebook messages, Instagram. Thank you for all the support. If you don't follow us on Instagram, it's at jscottoutdoors. I think today we just passed 8,000 followers, which is mind-blowing. And my associate Dar, DARRCOLBURN, at Dar Colburn on Instagram. Also our Facebook page at jscottoutdoors, our YouTube channel, jscottoutdoors, our mother site, jscottoutdoors.com. Guys, thanks for all your support. I can't wait to share this field judging elk part 1 of part 2 series. Guest Craig Steele with Exclusive Pursuits Outfitters and orghunt.com is going to be with me on both of these, part 1 and part 2 on field judging elk. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me after listening to the episode. I'm happy to cover them in a future episode, and I just thank you for all of your support. And guys, support the sponsors that make this podcast happen. That's GoHunt.com, Insider, and Deadeye Outfitters. All right, guys, let's get right to the episode. Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today we are going to talk about field judging elk. And to discuss field judging elk, I've got Craig Steele of Exclusive Pursuits Outfitters, who's a friend of the podcast and a friend of mine, and I'm excited to have him on to give his bits and pieces here on the field judging elk episodes. Craig, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Jay. How you doing, man?
Good. What are you doing today, and how is it in Kingman, Arizona?
I am right now watching it rain. It's cloudy. July 4th. Got up about 5 this morning. Did a couple blog posts. Put out an ad on Facebook. And now I'm talking to you. So it's going good. Later today I'll be hanging out at the pool, my in-laws pool with my wife and kids. So can't complain, man.
Awesome. Yeah, being 4th of July, you know, I think speaking off the cuff a little bit, there's a lot of things been going on politically with our country, and I'll be quite honest, a lot of things that I don't quite see eye to eye with. But being 4th of July and Independence Day and celebrating our independence from Britain, and our attempt to make a new start at things that we didn't like and didn't approve of at the time, kind of brings it back full circle. And I think with all the stuff going on politically, we don't have to agree with everything, but we have to remember that we are the United States of America, and that there have been people over the course of history that have, sacrificed for us to have a great country like we do have. And, over the course of the last 40, 50 years, there's been a lot of things politically that people don't agree with and I don't agree with and what have you, but we keep rolling on. I think we have to remember that. And, I'm in Colorado, and we celebrated July 4th. Actually, the town of Avon over in the Vail Valley does a big fireworks show. And, it seems like it doesn't matter where you're at, but anytime you see fireworks, for me, I automatically think of 4th of July. I automatically think of, how proud I am of my country, and I think it's important to remember that you don't have to agree with every little thing that goes on. And I love the 4th of July. Typically, I'm fishing somewhere, and the last 6, 7 years it's been here in Colorado, and so it's just a good time of year. The monsoons are starting to kick up in Arizona. You're saying it's raining this morning, Craig?
Yeah, it's raining. It's overcast, which sometimes isn't a good thing during the monsoon because heat doesn't build up and allow those giant storms to go. But yesterday I went down to Phoenix for a funeral, and there was a pretty good storm in Wickenburg, and I looked at the radar last night, and a lot of the elk country was getting rain. It's definitely an early start, and it's looking like it's going to be a fun year, man.
Yeah, having great monsoon moisture in Arizona, for those of you that don't live in arid climates in some of the western states that aren't as dry as Arizona, Craig and I lick our chops because on a wet year, because the rut will be great. We've already had good spring moisture, so it's looking like our antlers are going to be phenomenal. But to me, being an elk caller and like to stir it up with those bulls, there's nothing like having a wet monsoon where the cows are real fleshy and feeling good, and the elk just bugle their guts out. You're thinking it's probably going to be one of those years, don't you?
Yeah, it definitely is for people that don't really pay attention to that stuff. That what dictates the rut is actually the cows and how they cycle. And there are studies out there that you can find if you just research them that whether it be white-tailed deer or whatever type of deer species, the fatter and healthier those females are, the more consistent they cycle, and as a percentage. And I know some years on poor drought years, like 2002 was one that was probably the worst drought year in our history. Some biologists were saying only 15 to 20% of the cow elk actually cycled. So it makes a huge difference, and I know a lot of people don't fathom that or don't really think about that stuff. But it makes a huge difference, and partly because those cows are nursing calves, and they're basically providing for two, and it's just like a female within the human species. If they're not healthy, they won't have their monthly cycle either. So it's just nature. So yeah, more feed's better. More rain makes more feed.
Absolutely. And speaking of 2002, I remember I was actually in Unit 1 in 2002, and my thought with that was, knowing that it was going to be an extreme drought year, I thought, hey, I'll go try Unit 1. It's a little higher, alpine type country. And Jug Jenkins, a friend of mine from Oregon, drew the tag, and it was a real interesting year. The bugling was, sporadic, good on some days and kind of weak on others. I think 9 and 10 probably were a complete bust as far as bugling, but we had decent action in Unit 1. And one of the things that I remember specifically about that hunt in 2002 was Doug and I actually were trolling the fence there on the White Mountain Apache. We were on obviously the Unit 1 side, and we were walking along this fence, and as it is, the places you can't go, you just want to get as close to them as you can. So we're literally walking right down the fence, and we hear a bull bugle off as far as you could hear an elk bugle away. I mean, as far off as you could hear one. And, Doug looks over at me and says, well, call that one in. And I kind of laughed like, yeah, that bull can't even hear me. So I stood at the fence and gave a couple, cow calls, and he actually answered. And Doug's like, he heard you. I said, there's no way he heard me. He's like, he heard you. He just answered. I said, oh, he just is bugling on his own. So we sat there a little bit, and I went into another series of pretty loud cow calls, and the bull answered, and he actually sounded like he was facing us. And Doug looked at me, and he says, he's coming. I said, he's not coming. That thing's 3/4 of a mile away. And he says, he's coming. So I said, well, let's find a little spot here, and let's kind of make a plan. And I actually backed up like 50 yards, and Doug is literally set up maybe 10 yards off the fence line. And I said, Doug, do not shoot that bull unless he jumps over on our side. And he says, yeah, I know. So I back up, and in probably a matter of 5 minutes, I'm back and forth with the bull and just giving him enough, letting him bugle a couple times, kind of like I'm not coming to you, and letting him bugle and making him want it. And that bull comes all the way. He comes right up to the fence. I'll never forget. I'm watching this all unfold, and there was one spot where I said, Doug, I think he might jump right here, because it was kind of a low spot in the fence. And he got to that spot in the fence, and he actually had his head over the fence and was looking back both ways. And I just stayed quiet, and he's looking. And then he kind of backed up, so I kind of gave a cow call behind me, and he turned his head real fast. He jumped the fence, and when his feet got on our side of the fence and maybe took 1 or 2 steps, Doug shot him, and that was the bull he harvested. So 2002, that was just a real unique experience where the bull came off of the White Mountain Apache Indian Reservation, jumped onto our side in Unit 1, and Doug harvested him. It's a pretty cool story.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. So Doug always likes to tell his buddies that he's got a White Mountain Apache bull.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
I know. I was in 7 Westside, or I think might have been just 7 at the time, but I was hunting with a family friend who isn't necessarily really an archer before I was guiding, and I just remember that it was horrible. Antler growth was
horrible, meaning bugling and antler growth.
Bugling and antler growth was just horrible. I mean, it was. I think the monsoon showed up 2 weeks before the hunt, and of course everything had water. And to be honest with you, I wasn't near the. I didn't have the elk hunting experience that I have today. If I did, I would have been glassing a lot more. And I think would have been a lot more effective. But, you grow as a hunter, and I was out trying to set tanks and call in bulls, and they weren't really rutting very hard. What rutting was going on was very quiet and very, I call it code talking. They were not, there was not a bugle fest most of the time.
You bring up a good point there of learning as you go, and I'm at the point where I feel like every year in the elk woods I learn something new, and I can look back to 2002 and I don't know about you, but I mean I feel like I'm a better elk hunter now than I was then. And it'll be interesting to see throughout my life as I continue to take the month of September off and chase bulls and hunt elk. If there probably will become a point where I actually become a worse hunter. I feel like right now every year I get better because I'm learning more. Maybe could go further when I was 20 years old or 25 years old as I can when I'm 42 years old. And maybe that will be somewhat of a point where my elk hunting skills diminish and maybe I'm not as good as I am now. I may be mentally tougher and I may know more about how to hunt elk, but maybe physically I'm not going to be able to go as hard as I used to. What are your thoughts on getting better each year, Craig?
Absolutely. When I was 17, I thought I knew everything. When I was 25, I thought I knew everything. But what I found out is every year in what has helped me, guiding has helped me a ton. I think some of the best hunters in the world are guides, all throughout the world. I think there's, not that I know there's a lot of local guys that are great hunters as well. But really, taking in every bit of information that I possibly can and processing it, whether it be, listening to a story from somebody that may not be as experienced as you, but they tell a story and pulling out the facts. I'm really into pulling out the facts. I think you hear so many myths and so many things that you're like, is that because they read an article? Is that because they watched this show and it told them that scent lock suit was going to work? Or was the wind actually, at that time, thermals taking their scent a different direction or down that coulee or whatever else? There's so much you learn, and I think you can never learn enough. It's funny, the older I get, the more I realize the less I knew, and the more I realize how many good hunters are out there that I can learn from, whether I tell them that or not, or whether it's somebody that maybe isn't as skilled as what I believe I am. But you can learn so much. It's so much quicker now too, with the way the web is. I mean, there is no doubt learning. You can. I mean, you used to have to wait for a quarterly magazine, or watch what television show was on. Now you just Google it or YouTube it. It's just like field judging, what we're going to talk about here in a minute. I mean, now you just go to J. Scott Outdoors and look at the field judging articles. And I think, pride as you get older, because I've heard it. I've heard people, make comments towards me or about me, and say I'm not the hunter that I think I am, and that's fine. I think the older you get, and I'm going to use those as learning experiences. So hopefully when I'm, 55, 65, 70 years old, that I don't have that animosity, and that I realize that, I had my day, I had my time, and, hunting is always evolving and changing, and when you become bitter about that stuff, and think that you know everything, that's probably the time that you step down and let somebody else go with it. So,
yeah, that's a good point. We're going to talk about field judging elk today in this episode, and we're probably not going to be able to cover all of the intricate details of field judging elk, but if you do go to jscottoutdoors.com, you go to my website, on the right-hand side, if you scroll down, you can actually go down to where it says labels, and if you go down to the F's for field judging elk, there's actually 35 posts that I've done on field judging elk, and there's a lot of videos, there's a lot of pictures, there's a lot of diagrams, and pretty intricate, detailed information on field judging elk. And
let's hold up. If you guys listening, if you guys haven't been to Jay's blog, and he's being, very gracious in how he says that, it's the best information that's out there as far as field judging. And I'm not going to pull any punches here. What I know of Jay, and one of the things that everybody talks about that's around me is Jay's field judging with regards to desert bighorn sheep and elk hunting. He provides huge value to anybody that wants to get better. That's one of the things that have always drawn me to you as a person is I mean, you got images, you got videos, you got articles that you wrote for Elk Hunter and Western Hunter included in here, but it's the total deal, and it really, if you're wanting to get better at field judging and you need to look at pictures, you need to look at video, you need to, outside of actually doing it and having the experiences of doing it over and over again, this is the best thing to learn for that guy that doesn't, get an archery elk tag every year and doesn't get time to spend in the woods every year. It helps. And I know there's a lot of guys out there, they won't admit it, but there's a lot of guys out there that look at this stuff and Jay gives them value as well. So.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the things, over the years, I have received a few negative criticisms of someone that only is about score and only is about the numbers. And my response to a lot of that is, well, you really don't know me. What you see on my blog as detailed and, as thorough as I try and be, I'm that same way when I've got my own tag or if I'm guiding. But this field judging and scoring stuff basically stemmed from me wanting to learn, and most importantly, in all of my hunting and guiding, I want to be accurate. And I'm not a fan of fish stories. While I like hearing fish stories, I don't like hearing, this fish was, this big and some guy's arms are as wide as, 45-inch trout. I'm one that likes to say, no, it was really 16. It goes the same way into my hunting with the coos deer and the mule deer and the sheep and the elk and such, where, I want to know what that animal scores so that when I'm trying to evaluate for my own tag or for someone that I'm guiding, I can be as close and as accurate as I can. So am I a numbers guy? Yes. Do I feel that numbers and scoring is that why I hunt? Absolutely not. But I'm of the opinion that I want to be as accurate as possible. I don't want to make mistakes. And do I make mistakes? Every day. Do I misjudge animals? All the time. But I have learned a lot by providing a lot of these resources and diving into the numbers. When Dara and I are looking at an animal, we go back and forth and bounce back and forth with each other, Dara, my guiding partner, and, sometimes he's right, sometimes I'm right. Sometimes we're both wrong. But I feel like as analytical as you can get, it just makes you better.
Absolutely, it does. And anybody that, my thoughts on trophy hunting and admitting that I'm a trophy hunter and that this stuff absolutely makes you better. And anybody that puts in for an antlered species or a horned species, I think you're a trophy hunter. I don't care how you cut it, how you say it. I'm not talking about the trophy hunter that just cuts the head off and leaves all the meat. I'm talking about you desire antlers. You desire horns. To what degree, we can all have arguments on that.
And big ones.
And big ones. And if you have, I always use the analogy, if there's a 30-inch buck, mule deer, and a 2-point standing next to each other, and you elect to shoot the 30-inch buck, you cannot argue that you're not a trophy hunter. To what degree, we can argue all day long. But regardless of that, we're talking about field judging elk and getting better and trying to be as accurately accurate as we can. I think one of the things that, that I've really learned from you is in the guiding world is making sure you're credible. And it's one thing. It's disappointing when it's your own hunt. If you misjudge an animal, not because that's the only thing you hunt for, but just because, again, you want to be accurate. It's another.
Well, and you're setting a benchmark.
It's another, it's another aspect of the score. It's another thing when you do it for a paying client, somebody that's, doesn't maybe have the knowledge or the time, and they say, hey, I'd like to kill a 350, or I'd like to kill a 380, or I'd like to kill a 300. You want to do right by them. You want to make sure, you want to feel good that you're doing your job. It's no different than a contractor building a house or whatever else. You just want to make sure you do your job. And one of the things that I've found that it seems like, and we get a little off topic, but with judging and a lot of people that just clients or even just hunters out there that talk about 400 inch, 370, 380, 350, they really don't realize, and we're going to get into that, about there's only small differences that really add up to those different type of bulls within, measuring a bull. There really only is small differences, and that, I've always been like, oh, why, I don't really have to get my animals scored or whatnot. But it is, after I've seen the way stuff is marketed in the guiding world, and just the everyday Joe Blow saying this is a 400 inch, I think our numbers are really inflated high, and and we want to be accurate, and
yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. To me, credibility is absolutely paramount. It's number one. I don't ever want to be known as someone that is not credible, and that has made me dive into field judging and trying to be accurate.
Yes.
And since we're on that topic, I'm going to throw this out there that, the fish stories and the inflated numbers and the unofficial, non-official, official scores, it's got to stop. I mean, from across all aspects of hunting, in my opinion, there's nothing that makes me more sick than looking at 180-inch deer and having someone write 199 and 2/8 when you know that it's not even close. So, am I calling out the guiding world and industry? Maybe. But the reality is we're all hunters. But let's just be accurate, guys. If you get an animal officially scored, then be happy with the official score, even if it's not as high as the score that you thought it was. Don't go searching out other official scores and, have it scored 6 or 7 times until you get the score you like. These systems are put in place, Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young and SEI scores, although I think there's a big variance in some of them. If you take your animals to someone and one person always scores your animals, why would you take an animal to someone else just to get a higher score? We're kind of gotten off topic, but the point is credibility, and just whatever it is, call it what it is. And that's what led me to...
Do you remember when a 350 bull was cool? You remember that?
I do.
And it's still big, But,
yeah.
But
I just, if it's 352, it's 352. Don't call it 360.
Yeah.
If it's 110-inch coos, don't call it 116. Just call it what it is.
Yeah.
Because we all, as hunters, use these scoring systems, and we see a picture on Facebook or on Instagram, and it says 199, or it says, 404. Well, it would be nice if people were accurate. Then it would be educational to go, oh, that one's 404 and that one's 360. But when some of these photos are off by 20 inches or 30 inches, you're really misleading, and
that's the thing. You can't for taking this into the field judging topic. You can't accurately get better off of field judging or trying to educate yourself off dead photos, because there's too many different lenses, there's too many different angles and body sizes. And so if you're trying to, what you're saying is when somebody puts a photo up there, that says it's a 210-inch buck and it's really, a 185-inch buck, you can't. That's my dog.
I was gonna say it sounded like a cat fight or a dog fight in your.
She's wanting to play this morning, man. I'm the only one here, and she's wanting to play with me. She's only 8 months old, but anyway, you can't. If you're listening, don't even look at those images to try to get better at field judging. And I would take, unless there's an official score sheet myself, I would take every score with a grain of salt, because it just is what it is. Guides have learned that, to market scores and inflate numbers and that's why a lot of times with exclusive pursuit outfitters, with our marketing stuff, we don't even put scores. If we do get an official score, we'll blog about it, maybe post it up. If somebody asks, then we'll say, but we just let the animal speak for itself. And go from there. But, let's try to get back on field judging, because you and I will ramble about this all day.
Yeah. So, does Cujo need a bone or what?
Oh, she is. Yeah, one second. Time out. She's using let me feed her.
Okay, Craig, so getting into field judging elk, we've already talked about, listeners can go on jscottoutdoors.com, go down to the lower right, click on field judging elk, all 35 posts will come up, and there's a lot of details there. I want to talk about a few things, and one of them is first impressions. To me, if I'm up on a hill glassing through my binoculars or spotting scope, or in the field calling a bull, and a bull comes in, or I first see a bull, first impressions to me mean a lot. And one of the things that I like to do is I try and take the emotion out of it. If it's my tag and, I'm excited, it's hard for me, but I try and take the emotion out of it. And what I try and do is immediately look for weaknesses. So I've trained myself, when I glass up a bull, I'm trying to size up what are his weaknesses. I'm looking at his body size. I'm trying to age him, and maybe not specifically, he's a 5-year-old or he's a 6-year-old, but I'm trying to say, is his body mature? Is he a young bull or is he an old bull? Because a lot of times the young bulls can look big at first impressions, and then you realize that maybe they're, 150, 200 pounds smaller than a big old mature bull. So I'm looking, and very first things are I'm trying to say, what is this bull? And then I start looking, okay, is he a 6 point? And, most of the time I look for the 4th point and then look where the main beam, usually on most elk, kind of gives that curve and creates that whale tail. So you've got your 4th and your 5th. And for me, I like big backs. I like big backs on bulls. And isn't there a song?
There is a song.
I like big backs.
It's not big backs. I like big butts. They're mixed a lot.
But that's what my first impression is, okay, and then I start trying to categorize the bull. Is this a 300 bull? Is this a 330 bull? Is this a 350 bull? I don't know what you do, but that's what I do. When I first see an elk, I try and categorize it, get kind of an idea of age class of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I try to. It all depends on time. If we're talking about scouting and getting up and glassing or seeing a bull, I obviously if it's quick and whatnot, it's going to be all air judging. It's going to be 300, 350, 370 to 380, 400. Very rarely do I throw that ever out there. But it really, for me, it depends on time. First off, how I'm going to go about breaking down a bull. And if I'm setting up glassing for bulls, and I see something that just sticks out, whether I'm, combing, and then I catch a bull and he's got some characteristics or his frame. I look at his frame, I guess, width and length of the main beams first, and then, I'm attracted to mass. Big back ends always draw my eyes. And, it depends on time. If he's something that looks really big that I need to stare at for a little while longer with the glass, then I do. If he's something that I really can't tell or whatnot, or if it's early in the, glassing period, I might just note him, try to see, if tree-wise, is he going to get in the trees on me before I can get a look or get video or pictures of him, and then go on and continue glassing, because I want to, for lack of a better term, savor the moment and glass as many bulls as I can that morning from that point, or looking up, or however I may be doing it while they're out in the open.
And what you mean by that is you're classifying and categorizing bulls, trying to do it as quickly as possible, because in the mornings and in the evenings, a lot of times you only have a short period of time before they get out of the opens into the trees where you can't analyze them and look at them enough. I think what we've been talking about here, first impressions and what have you, is kind of the air judging method of scoring. And honestly, I think a lot of people use air judging, and they'll see a bull for 10 seconds and they'll say that was a 350 bull.
Yep.
Well, what they're doing is they're air judging, and they're kind of throwing it into a class or category. I think and I do that all the time, you do that all the time, but I think the other methods of scoring become more precise.
Yes.
But I think it's important to become fairly accurate at air judging and being able to quickly categorize. And I think, we talked about this morning before we were on the air, one of your favorite things to categorize is digiscoping.
Yeah.
And I can remember, the first digiscoping that I did was holding my little point and shoot camera up to my binoculars that were on my tripod, or up to my spotting scope, just trying to capture an image of that animal. And how that has evolved over some time and some years is now we have incredible digiscoping adapters. The Outdoorsman's makes a real easy one for your iPhone, with great adapters for either binoculars or spotting scopes. And then, I use the Swarovski Optic TLS APO adapter, and it's actually allowed us as hunters to get professional quality images. Maybe not images you would sell, but certainly be able to elevate our field judging. When Dar and I started really capturing digiscoping images, our scoring and field judging went up, significantly because of this. We could bring the photo or the video back, and each of us analyze it and look at it. And maybe what my first impression was, Dar's first impression would be something totally different, or Jay, you're a little off, or I think you're high, or you're low.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for people to get good at air judging. I think it's important for people to categorize bulls, but I think it's also important that to come back with a image, a video image, a photo image, where they can email it to friends of theirs, or even if they just want to look at it themselves, they can go, well, I didn't realize he didn't even have third points, or they're only 3 inches long. When a bull's got, big back end, your air judges is like, oh, that's a 350 bull. And then when you look at the image later, when you take the emotion out of it, you go, oh, I didn't realize he's got short, stubby fronts that, point straight out.
Yeah, if, obviously air judging is what, we all use, and getting accurate at that is critical to it's more of a time saver. You have to do it quickly, and you want to be accurate. Going to the digiscoping stuff, I think there's a lot of people out there, they don't get it. Like, they don't get that to me, field judging any species, that if I don't have pictures or video, I do not feel comfortable. I don't. And I do not feel comfortable with everything that I see, because sometimes I get amped up, or a lot of times I'm just going to, when I glass something up, I'm like, oh that's a big son of a gun, and I talk myself down. Same thing you're talking about. You talk yourself down. You start looking at them. Seeing them in the field is number one. But the actual, in my mind, the new number one is seeing them in the field, having video and images to where you can come back out of that environment and you have Google, you have J. Scott Outdoors, you have Orca, you have, all these different, you have all these different images and videos that you can go over, not to mention all your stuff that you have. You have buddies. Be careful who you send it to. But you can really analyze it. And, you and I have gone through this where, you either didn't think an animal was that big, or I didn't think an animal impressed us. The one that actually looks at the animal in the field and looks at the video is the one, and has the most experience, is the one that I'm going to lean towards that opinion. Their opinion holding the most weight, because sometimes angles and cameras, and depending on how close you are, how much vignetting's in the image, distance, time of day can really change things. Not as much
well,
with
and
elk, but definitely with other species it does.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, body placement. Is the animal, walking away from you? Is he walking towards you?
Yes.
One of the things that Dara and I like to, ever since we started digiscoping, even when it was just holding the camera and getting, moving, not very good video, but we would always try and get a image. And we'd talk to each other. Did you get it on video? Did you get a picture? Yes, I did. No, I didn't. I mean, just getting some image so you could re-verify what your air judge, what your initial first impression was, is so important. And I think that's, really, really helped me become a better field judger. And I think another thing that's helped me is I love to score antlers that I find, or I always have, I don't always, during hunting season when I'm in elk camp or whatever, I usually always have a tape in my pocket. Critics would say, oh, you're all about score. No, I'm all about becoming accurate.
Yep.
And I like to put a tape on. If I come across an antler, I tape it.
Yep.
Why? Because I'm training myself to know what a 16-inch brow tine looks like, to know what a 20-inch fourth point looks like, to know what a 52-inch main beam is. And the more antlers that you can put your hands on and score, the better you will become at field judging. I think it's a huge part of my success of being accurate and getting better each day at being accurate is measuring antlers.
I mean, there's a lot of people that call out numbers all the time that they don't even know if a 13-inch G1 is good or if a 23-inch G1 is good, and they just air judge and call it out there. I think most of the people that are probably listening, have some sort of sense of what is a good G1 or what is a good G2, what is that area typically holds. I think that's what you're getting at is, and I'm the same way with, I love the tape things. I know Boone and Crockett has, I know they do for antelope. I think they do for elk. They have, the average in a breakdown, they have the average of a Boone and Crockett entry level animal, what the average time length is, or mass measurements is, and that's a good basis to start from, you know.
And speaking of that, Craig, I had done an article for Elk Hunter magazine, and I broke down some average measurements. So they're examples based on a standard 6x6 frame, and you can find this chart on my website on, let's see, July 11th, 2012. There is a chart, and for those of you out there listening, this is based on an average 6x6 frame. A 300 to 310 bull, average inside spread. Now this is just a rough kind of chart, 35 inches. Main beam length per side, 45 inches. Mass per side, 25 inches. Point length per point, 13. Point length per side, 65. Gives you a total of a 305 bull. A 320 to 330 bull, inside spread is 37 inches, main beam length per side is 47, mass per side is 27, point length per point 14 inches, point length per side is 70 inches, total 325 bull. Now, one thing that I need to point out is these are just averages. This is just a chart that you could take with you. And if you're looking at a bull and you've scored some elk antlers and you say, oh, he's got 14-inch points, you can look down at your chart and say per point length, 14-inch, he's probably in the 325 range. Well, if he has extra short main beams or extra long main beams, or he's heavy or he's thin, maybe it's, one way or another, but this is a good chart to use. And I think by pointing out this chart, one thing I need to mention, in my mind, the most important thing when finding a high-scoring bull is time length. Mm-hmm. Time length makes up about 45% of your score. Main beam makes up about 28% of your score, mass 16, and spread is 11. So when I'm field judging an elk and I'm looking for big elk, the first thing that I'm looking for is long points, because very rarely can you have a high-scoring bull that doesn't have long points. There are a few exceptions to the rule, but long points and long main beams usually equal a big bull. Mm-hmm. People talk about a spread of a mule deer or a spread of an elk. Spread on an elk is not a big percentage of your score. Now, that can be deceiving because you can look at a bull and think he's a 350 bull, and usually a 350 bull, if you're looking at average spread, you're about 38 inches, but let's say he's a 50-inch bull, that's 12 inches, so you're now looking at a 362 bull. So with point length, main beam, mass, and spread, the one thing I will say is you've got to watch those real wide bulls, because they will have your average point length that for a 350 type bull, but you've got to watch those wide bulls, because they can actually jump you into a whole nother category before you even know it.
Yeah, my wife loves wide bulls. I'm sitting here looking at this bull that Dar's hunter killed with, speaking of long tines, I think he went 401 gross.
That's the typical bull, 6x6, Tim Allen's bull.
Yes, Tim Allen's bull. And I'm looking at that bull, and I'm just going to call out air judging right now. I'm looking at that bull, and when I look at this bull, I do not see 401 air judging. I do not see 401 air judging. I don't know how you, and a lot of guys, I think too, I know for me, I like bulls that turn down on their main beams, and those type of bulls, for me personally, it just depends. If I see a bull like that, if he's 380 and there's a bull that's 400 inches, it depends on what I want to shoot. But a bull his beams turned down really hard in the back, it's going to be really hard for me personally to pass. So looking at Tim Allen's bull, I look at it just air judging.
And by the way, that's on the June 11th or July 11th, 2012 post. For those of you that are listening that want to also log on and check out what Craig's talking about. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, and you just look at this bull, and his left side turns up, and his right side just is kind of lazy. I call those kind of lazy beams. They don't really do a whole lot. His right side turns down a little bit, but then I'm sure you get to looking at this bull's his fronts, his G1s and G2s. His bez and brows, some people call them. You start adding up the inches. He's not overly wide. He's got a lot of curve to his top end that makes his top end, in my opinion, doesn't really show how big his top end actually is, because it kind of curves in. So the angle, versus a bull that his back end, his points come straight off his horn, they look bigger. His curvature and how it lays in, to me, makes him look deceiving. And it's just, and I was reading this and thinking about this bull and seeing this bull, and when I first air judged him, I was thinking, oh man, that's a 370 bull, and it just goes to show you, I was off by 30 inches,
Yeah, and I think even Dar would say, he knew it was a big bull. But one of the things that blew them away was the body size. Dar said it had a giant body, and I think when you're making your first impression, body size. If he's standing in a field with 5 or 6 other bulls, and he's a Goliath, he's a giant bull, then you have to realize that his antlers are actually going to look smaller on his head than if that was over on the 5-year-old bull that's a young-bodied, sleek kind of neck, sleek down, bull kind of starting to get into his starting into his prime. This set of antlers is going to look gigantic on a smaller body. I think speaking specifically about Tim Allen's bull, I was not there. I was over in Unit 23. Dar was in Unit 10. The main beams on this bull are dang near 60 inches.
Yeah.
And that brings up the point of point length is number one. If you take all the big bulls, typically long points is number one, main beams is number two. But if you have extra long main beams, that can throw you off a little bit, or extra short main beams.
Big time.
I remember Michael Park's bull that same year in 2009, scored 435, and off of memory, his beams, I want to say, were only 53 inches, 52, 53 inches, but he had tons of point length. Or even like Mike Gallo's giant bull that Jay and Chad and the A3 guys, they're probably 475 inch bull. I want to say his beams weren't even 50 inches, but he had points galore.
Mm-hmm.
So long points, and while we're talking about that, extra points. Points in my book, when field judging, are everything. Point length is the single most important ingredient for a bull to score high. If you have an abnormal point, an extra point, you're just adding inches in your point length category. So if you're looking at a 6x6 bull or a 7x7 bull or an 8x8, every time you get more than the standard 6-point frame, a 7x7, even if his G6s are only 8 inches long and they look short on the frame, that's 16 inches of extra that you get to throw in your point length category. And so, speaking in general, extra points mean a lot.
Yeah. I typically, and you can answer this question, but when I field judge, specific, I mean, unless you just have a ton of time, I'll try to net a bull out, but most of the time, especially if it's in the field, let's say on a hunt, my dog just opened my door. When it's on an actual hunt, let's say a hunt scenario, I'm not factoring in the net score. I'm adding up what I can add up and trying to get the gross score. Because you start factoring in, 2 inches here, 3 inches there. And so with extra tines, I like, personally, I don't care. Anytime a bull breaks, 380, he's a giant, but if he breaks 400 with extra points, then that's all fine and dandy. It just depends, a lot of times with what the hunter wants as well. But most of the time, you don't have the time to actually net a bull up. Would you, in a hunting scenario, would you say that true?
I agree. I mean, when you're netting a bull up, that's when you're using your digiscoping photos and images and video to help you break down and estimate the actual measurements of each point. And I think we're going to cover, estimating the actual measurements, and then I have a magic number estimating the shortest points, tactics, methods that I use to field judge. We're going to cover those in the next field judging episode. But I think it's important to get a good, solid gross score, not worry about the net so much until you go back and review and analyze your digiscoping photos. Craig, I think one thing I want to point out too is that, Craig and I live in Arizona, and we're fortunate to be around a lot of big bulls. But I want the listeners out there that are trying to learn how to field judge, and maybe their area doesn't have big bulls. They're in a state that, the biggest bull may be 330 inches or 300 inches. You can still learn how to field judge. What you need to do is study and analyze bulls that are killed in your area and know specifically what the average point length, the average mass, the average spread, because across the country, body sizes differ. Sometimes in a unit, a 6-point is a trophy, and there's, a lot of 4 and 5 points and young bulls, but they just don't get to be 6 points. So I want to make sure in this series of podcasts where we're talking about field judging elk, I don't want you guys to think we're just talking about, giant bulls over, 350 inches. I kind of want to cover it all. But some of these same characteristics and things that I'm talking about work on a 300 bull or a 400 bull.
Yeah, it's just scale. It's just slide the scale down. There's no, like you were just saying, we're blessed to live in Arizona, and then you go to the Indian reservations, and that's like a wildlife park. I mean, just giant bulls and there, and just on the public side, we're blessed. And not all units in Arizona are the same either. Some units in Arizona, 350 is a tank. And I know in some states that, over the counter hunt, it, like you said, Jay, it might be a 6-point is just a hell of a bull. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, and inches doesn't measure your skill level as a hunter, but, we're just really, really blessed to be able to hunt some of the biggest animals, elk, in the world, or guide for them. And so that's why we, talk about this stuff,
Well, and I think it's, I think everybody that hunts classifies and categorizes their animals that they're hunting. Guys that are hunting in states where maybe the bulls are smaller, maybe a 350 bull is just a benchmark bull that, there's only, a couple a year get shot over 350. They're still, whether they're categorizing bulls as a, 260, a Pope and Young minimum type bull, a 280 or a 300, I think it's important wherever you hunt, if if trying to be accurate and telling, your friends and your buddies and reliving your experiences, being accurate with your field judging is important. So I think we've covered enough today on this episode. I think we're going to dive into these future episodes. We'll dive into how to estimate the actual measurements per each point, and talking about point length, talking about main beams, talking about inside spread or mass and inside spread, and we'll go in specifically. And then we will also talk about, I have kind of a magic number formula that I use where I automatically plug in a spread, I automatically plug in main beams, and then all I do is add up points, and we'll dive into that in the next episode. Craig, I want to thank you for being on this morning and being with us, and look forward to diving into the next episode and getting into the details of estimating actual measurements.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right, buddy.
Talk to you later.
Well, we covered a lot in that episode, part 1 of field judging elk, and I can't wait to share part 2 with you guys. I wanted to remind you to sign up for GoHunt.com Insider, and if you sign up, you will receive a free $50 KUIU gift card, so you can buy some KUIU gear with just by signing up for the GoHunt.com Insider. There's 3 easy steps to get the KUIU $50 card. Visit GoHunt.com/insider, click on the blue Join Now button, and use the promo code JScott at checkout. You will be sent a $50 KUIU gift card. I've talked about on previous episodes, and I've had Jason Hairston on talking about KUIU, and Dar and I have been using the KUIU gear for a long time now. And this will be a great start for those of you maybe that haven't gotten any KUIU gear, or for those of you that love KUIU. Here's an extra free $50 KUIU gift card using the J Scott promo code. Guys, don't miss out. Thanks for listening to the J Scott Outdoors Western Big Game Hunting and Fishing Podcast, brought to you by GoHunt.com Insider. Research faster, hunt more. Go to GoHunt.com/insider and join today.